Too many buttons. Thank you, David. Thank you for that track back to way long time ago. Some of us were there. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you for being part of this service. I know you have lots of choices in our virtual world, and we're glad you decided to be here today with us. Today, I'm going to keep continuing on the theme of life as a pattern of wholeness and how remembering this truth helps us be free, helps us feel free in our lives. And I want to start with a quote from Naomi Remen. So perhaps change is less about fixing a broken world and more about uncovering hidden wholeness in all events, all organizations, and all people, and remembering our personal power to make a difference. This old story has greatly changed the way I am a physician and also a teacher. It has given me new eyes. Everyone and everything has in it a seed of greater wholeness, a dream of possibility. Perhaps what I once saw as broken or lacking might just as easily be seen as the growing edge of becoming, a place to be valued and nurtured in our patients, our students, and in ourselves. Dr. Rachel's quote is the perfect opener to the conversation about whether we see ourselves as living in a broken world that needs someone else to fix it, or whether we have a possibility for our own experience. This can be a hard pill to swallow because common hour thinking says our world is quite broken and has always been broken, and somebody else has to fix it. For most of recorded history, this has been true. Most people have always looked for someone else to save them because they believed they couldn't save themselves. And this is actually what most organized religions and most civil organizations or civilizations have taught. But what if that's not true? For culture, enculturation, and civilization as we understand it, this belief that someone else has to save us makes the population easier to manage and control. But what if it's not true? What if it's not accurate? What if it's not really valid? We are all, each, as free as we decide to be. When we think someone has to grant us the freedom to feel free, we have given them our power. We have given them our autonomy over us. The notion that we have to have some other person, group, or institution grant us freedom from anyone or anything or any condition or any experience is actually based in bad or incomplete information. This is a deeply embedded false belief in the thinking of adult humans. We pick it up honestly through our upbringing and through our tribal and cultural history and conditioning. We pick it up unconsciously from what our parents and our guardians and our social groups believed. Truthfully, we are the only ones that can free ourselves from the tyranny of our outdated beliefs. From Dr. Ernest Holmes in the little book, This Thing Called You, which is many people's favorite, page 26 and 27, the freedom which the all-creative wisdom has designed for humans is marvelous beyond human perception. Life has given humans an intuitive sense of things. It has permitted them to evolve through countless ages of trial and error to the day of their redemption, always knowing their redemption is certain. But the timing, even of eternity, so far as humans are concerned, rests in their present or delayed acceptance. It could be today or tomorrow. It could have been yesterday. We live in a universal now, and this now waits on our acceptance. The greatest gift life could have made to you is yourself. You are a spontaneous, self-choosing center in life, in the great drama of being, the great joy of becoming, the certainty of eternal expansion. You couldn't have asked for more, and more could not have been given. Life will be to you what you are to it. Of necessity, there is a divine pattern at the center of everything. This is the Christ consciousness in you, waiting your recognition. When I first got this crazy call into ministry way back when, I declined. I said I wasn't interested. This wasn't something I wanted, not even remotely. In my family of origin and in the church that I grew up in, women weren't allowed to be ministers. So I had this really strong bias against this thing. In fact, women weren't even allowed to pray in front of men or teach men. We just weren't. It wasn't okay. And sadly, in that particular church, it's still true. And I had to re-educate myself, my internalized belief systems, my unconscious beliefs, to make space for an idea that was so different from what I grew up with. I had gotten bad data. I had gotten outdated and inaccurate information. And I had to overwrite or rewrite or reframe or whatever word you want to use with this recognition of the divine pattern in me that would allow me to do this work. And it wasn't a belief system that gave up easily. It took consistent persistence on my part. And eventually I was able to override it, mostly. Every now and then it still shows up, but mostly I've been able to put it away. Psychologist Pearson wrote in the reading from the Science of Mind magazine for today, heroes take journeys, confront dragons, and discover the treasure of their true selves. Every one of us has a dragon that keeps us from our treasures. If you think about the stories about dragons and the dragon's gold, that gold didn't belong to the dragon. It belonged to somebody else, and the dragon was guarding it, protecting it, and keeping it from its rightful owners. Every single one of us has a dragon that's keeping us from our treasures. Every one of us has belief systems that keep us thinking small, keep us acting small, keep us from being fully expressed as the divine beings that we actually are. And each one of us has the opportunity to free ourselves mentally and psychologically. And we know that everything begins with a thought. When I choose to unbind my thoughts, my world must become unbound. That's just how it works. It doesn't have any choice. When I can unbind my thinking, my world has to comply with that because thoughts are things. Dr. Holmes wrote in the Science of Mind text, page 313 and 314, our thought is creative in our world. Macrocosm, big world. Microcosm, little world, our world. We produce the cosmos. We reproduce the cosmos in our individual world. Every day we live from this unity and project the experiences from it on the screen of our lives. We have done this so long in ignorance that we appear to be bound by the outlines of the forms, which our ignorance has projected. This is what Plato meant when he gave us the story of the slaves in the cave. They saw the shadows of bondage and thought they were bound, while all the while those chains had no reality. So how do we experience freedom for ourselves and see it for everyone? From Judge Thomas Troward, belief in limitation is the one and only thing that causes limitation, because we impress limitation on the creative principle. In proportion as we lay the belief aside, our boundaries will expand and increase our experience of life, and more abundant blessings will be ours. I'm really glad that Keith Gorley is considering a new book study beginning in August on Frederick Bale's Hidden Powers for Human Problems. It's not a new book, but it has been recently reprinted, so it will be fairly easy to come by. Bales was also an early religious science minister. He and Ernest Holmes wrote several books together. On page 117 of my antique copy, Bales wrote, this made me laugh, "We come from a winning biological strain. We are the top quality descendants of the finest ancestors. As the stream of life developed, only those survived who could adapt and change. Those who failed to do this through stupidity or cowardice were snuffed out before maturity. Therefore, only the successful grew to maturity and begat progeny. Thus, the people on earth today are a product of a naturally selected strain of winners. In our blood is the accumulated will to win of thousands of generations of winning ancestors. We are intended for winning. We are also intended for freedom. We are the ones who get in our own way by what we think and what we consciously and unconsciously believe, and what other people unconsciously believe, and we go along with them. So how do we feel free? We have to think free thoughts and then act accordingly. Sometimes we act first, and we don't find the action as enjoyable as we expected it to be. We can become aware of our own internal conflicts when we do that. So we act and we discover that we don't believe, and it's not fun. Back when I gave my first talk in ministerial school, I was awful. It was awful. I wanted to throw up. I didn't. I don't know why. And I wanted it over as soon as possible because it was horrible. And it was over. My first talk lasted 7.5 minutes. It was supposed to last 18. I still felt desperately conflicted about being a minister, and it was very much in my face. I had to overcome that obstacle in my mind, in addition to overcoming stage fright that had overwhelmed me since I was a kid. And then the Zoom thing happened. And for a minister, talking on Zoom is pretty miserable again. So I had to look at what my feedback was for doing talks on Zoom, because I don't get that feeling of interaction. That's what made it work for me. And so it's a struggle. Every minister that I've spoken to who has given talks, unless they're performers, in which case it's easy for them, but anybody who's like me and is very interactive, this Zoom thing is really, really hard. And so each one of us has had our own internal battle, our own internal struggle all these many weeks to find a way to feel like we have the freedom to do this thing that we feel called to do. It's a wonder any of us made it. And so I've had to change my mind over and over and over again, and my stories too, so that I could speak, so that I could talk on Zoom, so that I could talk without audience feedback. And honestly, even so I could pray in front of groups of people. That was like a really big thing to me the first time I had to do it. I was terrified. And now it's like, okay, fine, whatever. It didn't happen quickly, but it did happen. I persisted. I saw what was in my way, and I was able to override it or overwrite it, depending on my frame of reference. So in the daily reading from the Science of Mind from Friday, Dr. Holmes wrote on page 290, declare, there is one supreme intelligence within me, which governs, guides, guards, tells me what to do, when to act, and how to act. Having done this in perfect faith, act with perfect assurance. Declare further, everything necessary to the full and complete expression of the most boundless experience of joy is mine now. I had to read that again when I was reading this on Friday. Everything necessary to the full and complete expression of the most boundless experience of joy is mine now. Know it, see it, feel it, and be it. Do this every day for a few minutes. We should all do this until the time comes when it's no longer necessary. When that time comes, we will know it because our demonstrations will have been made. What would happen if each one of us actually took the time and spent the energy to work that idea? Everything necessary to the full and complete expression of the most boundless experience of joy is mine now. We get to find out where we have resistance to that. We get to begin to embody that. We get to actually start feeling it and start having that experience. In that experience of the most boundless experience of joy now is freedom. And it's ours if we claim it. So from marketing writer Seth Godin, freedom has a partner. Its name is responsibility. It's easy to insist on all the things we wish to be free from. But then we also realize we have the freedom to act, to lead, to confront our fears and our selfishness. Once we realize our own agency, freedom begins to feel like our responsibility. We have a freedom to make a difference. So make your demonstrations of freedom. Know your freedom. Feel free. Accept your agency. Accept your autonomy. Accept your responsibility for your own self, your own ability to respond. And know that the full and complete experience of the most boundless experience of joy that you can imagine is yours already. So I want to close by repeating a little piece of what I read earlier from Rachel Naomi Remen, and then a piece from Daniel Ladinsky. Everything and everything has in it a seed of greater wholeness, a dream of possibility. Perhaps what I once saw as broken or lacking might just as easily be seen. Let me try that again. Perhaps what I once saw as broken or lacking might just as easily be seen as the growing edge of becoming. And then from Daniel Ladinsky in the style of Hafiz, you know this one. The small man builds cages for everyone he knows, while the sage, who has to duck his head when the moon is low, keeps dropping keys all night long for the beautiful rowdy prisoners. Each one of us is the small man who builds cages for ourselves and others. We are also the one trapped in the cage, those beautiful rowdy prisoners. We are, or we can be, the sage who has the key and frees those prisoners. The choice is up to us. We can feel free when we decide to focus on what's in our control to manage and use. The fancy word is actuate. what things in our lives we wish we choose to actuate, things we bring into our conscious awareness and decide to make progress on. It's ours to choose. Do that. Bless yourself and bless us all. Thank you. So I want to roll straight into the prayer. Think about some way you wish to own your freedom. Think about some way you wish to step up to the responsibility of doing what's yours to do and thinking the kinds of thoughts that would allow mind to give you that desire of your heart while I speak the words. I live in the space of wholeness. I remember this one mind, this divine mind, this whole and holy presence that lives, moves, and has its being in me and in all beings. I know that this mind lives as joy. It lives as love. It lives as harmony and peace and order. And it gives me the opportunity to do the same thing. And it gives everyone the opportunity to do the same thing. Each one of us is perpetually free to decide how to see our lives and our world. And each one is already free to decide what's theirs to do, what they can change in their lives and their experience, how they can see their world in a more whole. That green growing edge of our becoming lives within each of us at all times and is always available for each one of us to step into the next great becoming that asks us to participate. So I accept this awareness. I accept this opportunity. I accept this ability to step into a larger view of myself. And I know each has that same opportunity right now and always. And if today's not the day, the opportunity will continue to wait, because these are not opportunities lost when they're missed. They just show up in a new form later. And we continue to receive those opportunities until we're ready to accept them. So I accept this opportunity today, and I step into this greater yet to be, knowing this great good that wishes to show up. And I allow it, and I receive it, and I accept it. And I know this great good already lives in, as, for, and through all life. Blessing each and all wherever they are on their path, knowing each continuously has the opportunity to step into a greater expression of their own joy. I relax into these words. I accept them as true, and I let them be. And so it is.